Are you a beginner graphic designer hoping not to look that way? There are some common mistakes that you'll want to avoid to look like a pro. Let's dive in. Two to three fonts maximum. Say it with me. 2 to 3 fonts maximum. Repeat that over and over again until it's beaten into your brain. The inner doodler in all of us loves to experiment with any number of different fonts. When it comes to your design, you need to stick to a maximum of 3, and they should all complement one another. Don't use 2 similar serif fonts. Instead, include a sans serif font to provide some contrast. Overall, the fonts you choose should match the personality you or your brand has created. Just always remember, 2 to 3 fonts maximum. Have you heard the saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words? This is something else that you'll want to keep in mind as you're building your graphics. The images you choose can portray your message just as well, if not better, than the words that you're writing. And nowadays, when somebody opens up any PDF, image, or similar, the second they see a laundry list of words, they're turned off and uninterested. So instead, use images where you can and shorten your text descriptors to only the most vital information that images can't portray. Okay, I promise I won't have corny sayings throughout the entire video, but I do have another one. Less is more. You shouldn't feel the need to cover every inch or pixel of your graphic with a design element. White space or negative space is defined as the areas of a page without text or pictures. But really, you should look at it as another important element of the design itself. Too much design can take away from the focus. Think of Google's website homepage. They use their signature font, their search bar, and almost nothing else throughout the entire page. It's just literal white space. They used it to perfection. Perfect isn't always preferred, especially when it comes to visual appeal. You don't need to try to achieve perfect symmetry with your design elements. It's okay if not everything is centered or there's more detail on the left side rather than the right side. Perfect symmetry can be boring. Something not so symmetrical has pizzazz and personality. Just remember, there's no rule requiring perfect balance. If you added a background image, make sure it doesn't conflict with your text so much that it becomes difficult to read. You may need to adjust the color of your text or add a shade over the background image to create some contrast. The text is your message, and you don't want that to get lost in the graphic. Make it pop. Now, I just mentioned how too many words can deter a reader from reading the text. I wanted to touch on that a little bit more. Long lines of text should be avoided at all costs. A good rule of thumb to remember is to keep lines to 50 to 60 characters max. Any more and it'll feel like the viewer is reading a novel rather than scanning a graphic. Now, kerning may be a foreign word if you're a beginner designer. Kerning is the spacing between letters. Advanced design tools will allow you to customize this to your liking, but you don't need to get too freaky with this. The spacing between letters for individual words should be consistent. If you want to change the spacing for different words, that can work, but it needs to feel right and not sloppy or like you're trying to make something work that just doesn't. It may be best not to tinker with kerning at all, making your life really easy, but it can be tempting once you stumble upon it in your editing software. As you can see from this example, kerning becomes a different word entirely when the spacing becomes too tight. Be careful, as there's some bad examples on the internet of this. Perhaps the biggest decision you'll make is what colors you're going to use throughout your design. You shouldn't go overboard here. Just like with fonts, keep it simple, minimal, and find shades that match well together. Adobe has a color tool that makes color pairing super easy. The right colors will increase the readability and grab the viewer's attention where necessary. One major mistake that you can make is not creating your design for a specific medium. A graphic that looks good in a presentation won't look good on a billboard. Consider that RGB color mode is best for for consuming content digitally, while CMYK color mode is best for print. Did you know that? Consider how people will be viewing your design in the planning phase and move forward accordingly. Are you familiar with the rules of visual hierarchy? If not, I recommend watching our video to learn more about what it is and the rules to follow as you design. But to give you a brief Cliff Notes version, visual hierarchy refers to how elements are arranged and in turn digested in a design. It gives your design elements an order of importance. How you lay out your graphic will guide readers along and emphasize what they should focus on. A simple example would be making your titles bigger or bolder. If your title matches everything else, a reader's eyes won't guide them to perhaps the most important element of your graphic, the title. Along the lines of what we just discussed is scaling your elements properly. You shouldn't be afraid to tinker with the sizing of your text, images, and other elements. You just want to keep it clean. If you overstretch something, it will become distorted, which is easy to spot for a first-time viewer. I mentioned creating contrast with your fonts, but you want to maintain contrast throughout all of your aspects of your graphic. The color scheme in your images is equally as important. Again, contrast can draw importance. It tells your eyes where to look. You can find contrast between light and dark colors, rough and smooth textures, large and small shapes. It doesn't have to be colors alone, so get creative. If you're still caught up on the symmetry tip I mentioned earlier, one way to help is by using a grid to ensure your elements are at least properly aligned. Our first example is messy, sloppy, it's unprofessional. But our next is properly aligned, neat, and effective. It's still not perfectly balanced, but it's not text thrown anywhere on a page either. Earlier we discussed kerning, which is likely a foreign word to you. Now let's discuss leading. This is the spacing between lines of text. Again, this may be something not to mess with entirely, but you do have the freedom to do so if you choose. Too tight of leading is stressful and crowded. Too much leading is disjointed and spaced out. You want to find a happy medium to maximize the use of your space while also being easy to read. Raster images are made up of pixels and will become blurry when enlarged. Vector images, on the other hand, are made up of geometric lines and curves, remaining crisp no matter the size. Try to make your graphic file size as large as you can. If you start at a high resolution but scale it down, the image will remain clear. However, the other way around will create a pixelated image that immediately sacrifices your credibility. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have. Worry no more. If you follow these tips, you'll create a design that ranks with the best of them. You don't need to copy other people's work. That's what templates are for. Just remember, as you're editing the template to create it for your client or the subject who's most important. Unless it's for you, don't create something that appeals to your own design taste. You must keep the viewer in mind at all times. Get your brain gears churning and stay consistent with your designs throughout the entire project. Just because you moved on to a new page in the same project doesn't mean you find new fonts or new colors or so on. We hope you learned something new in this video. If you did, please like it. And if you want to learn more tomorrow, I encourage you to check out and to subscribe to our channel, where we are always producing content to help young designers just like you. We'll see you next time. With Visme, I'm Mike Ploger, helping you make information beautiful.